day I went out to lunch with this old girl, and hey Dave, it's Dave. It's Factory 5 Live on Thursday, May 7th. I'm here with my trusty sidekick, Mad Dog. I got Jim Skankin here to keep me straight on all the facts. I'm going to talk about what's cool today, and this bike is definitely cool. What makes it even more cool for me is the dry clutch. But we're going to talk about cool things that maybe some cool things are really, really cool from a performance standpoint. Maybe some things are not so cool because they actually don't work. We're going to talk about that in terms of so let's come on inside. Outside here, dry clutch is cool. I don't care what he says. I mean, think about it. A dry clutch, you have more friction. It's outside. It doesn't last as long. It rattles and makes a noise. I've been in traffic before at a turn light, and the lady next to me is like, "Something's wrong with your motorcycle," you know, because it's rattling away. And I'm like, "Yeah, there's something wrong with it. All right, it's cool." Well, a wet clutch, you know, the wet clutch, you don't have that. You have more drag from the engine oil. That's about it. And a dry clutch, you don't have those particles in the oil, but everybody changes their oil. You got an oil filter. I mean, let's just face it. At the end of the day, 98%, 99% of the bikes out there have a wet clutch for a reason. Better, works better. But if you're a MotoGP bike or you're an old guy on a Ducati, it's cool, man. And so a lot of stuff we do is cool. Let's come on inside and talk about cool. All right, so I'm gonna put my glasses on here. Jim's over here. Origins of cool. You know, when I was in third grade, second grade, Danny Doyle was in fifth grade at Parkville Elementary School in Guaynabo, Puerto Rico, and he was cool, man. He had Converse high tops. He rode the Schwinn Stingray crate. Remember the orange crate bike? He had the 5-speed gear shifter on the cross. Did you have a gear shifter, Jim, in the middle?
I never had that.
Yeah, well, most guys learn that that's not cool when you slip off, but it's cool, right? It doesn't work very well, but it's cool. Well, that guy was cool, and I wanted to be like Danny Doyle. Well, we are purveyors of cool at Factory 5, but I like to think that a lot of the things we sell are both cool, but also work really well. So there's always a compromise, and you want to look at things and be honest about, you know. Now, there are some things that are not cool. I'm going to call it. Now, the fart can crowd, the Honda Civic with the 6-inch fart can, not cool, and maybe this is an age-related thing. I was going to quote Clint Eastwood from Gran Torino after he passes away in his will, he leaves his Gran Torino to Tao, and he lists all these requirements. He was an older guy, and there were some things that were not cool. Well, for me personally, I don't like the fart cans. I don't like the stance crowd. It's not cool. I don't care what your age is. If you're riding on the inside 1-inch wall of your tire, and you know, maybe for a NASCAR it works, but for a Honda Civic going down the highway, maybe it's age, maybe I'm old. That's not cool. I like some things that are not cool will actually bite you in the butt, like those kids that wear their pants beyond their butt all the way down around their legs. They can't run very fast. They end up tripping when they're trying to steal a Milky Way bar. So cool, not cool. There's stuff that we like, stuff that we don't like. But let's talk about brakes. So I love cross-drilled, slotted rotors. Let's talk about Wilwoods. Jim, give us a primer on brakes because, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, there's nothing more cool. Adam built his car. I put a set of Wilwoods on his car because I thought they were cool. But there's a huge debate about cross-drilling. And I dropped the Coupe R. If you want to go down there with Mad Dog,
Yep.
Those brakes on the Coupe R are cross-drilled. That's our race car.
Right.
I mean, from my perspective, they look cool. But cross-drilling, there's a big debate.
Right. I mean, cross drilling in general is not something you see on the real top level motorsports cars, and that's for a reason. It's not necessarily a performance advantage. There's a little weight saved in the rotor, which is actually very important. But in terms of performance, for most guys, that's not the big deal. What the big deal is with the Wilwoods is really diameter and caliper stiffness, and those two things really do make this a much better brake than an OEM caliper or something off of a factory car. So you can upgrade this to this brake package, show it off in the wheels. It looks good. Everybody likes it, particularly when they have the rolling chassis in their garage and you can see it. But it is an actual better part. So you're not just basically saying, okay, this is the best looking thing. Forget about how it works. This is actually something that's going to make the car stop quicker. And that's been our experience, and really we use the same exact brakes that we sell when we build a track car. This is a full track car. Both cars here have our same exact brake package that we sell. Sometimes we upgrade to a race pad, like a full race pad, which you don't necessarily want to use on the street because of the sound, but we do recommend using at least a semi-race pad because that initial grip just works better with the manual with manual brakes without power assist. So.
But have you had any failures? Because the big liability of cross-drilling rotors is cracking, right? And Wilwood, if you're buying a high-end brake, we haven't had that problem with cracking.
Right. I mean, you never want to try to cross-drill your own rotors.
Right.
You get stress risers, and they will crack. They just will. And the early aftermarket brakes, a lot of them, the lifespan of them would be about half what it is on one of the newer brakes. Some of the OEMs use them with cross-drilled where they're actually cast in. The Wilwoods, we've never had a problem with that. So it's not a reliability issue at all.
Well, I talked to Dustin at Wilwood, and we were talking about brakes, and they wouldn't do cross-drilling for the longest time, and when they did, their sales doubled. You know why? Because they're cool, man. They're cool. From brakes, go to wheels, because there's nothing more cool than a set of vintage Halibrand. These are pin drive wheels, man. These are really, really cool wheels. And we'll get into tires in a second, but the truth is, my own brother had a wheel fall off on him, a pin drive wheel, and we had a wheel fall off at Run and Gun. That was a whole nother story. That wasn't a pin drive, that was another reason, but there's safety reasons, there's other reasons. But when it comes to wheels, Jim, I think we've got a happy medium where we've got some cool wheels that are also kind of safe, stronger, lighter. But give them the specs on like our Halibrands 15s, 17s, 18s.
Right. So really what we try to do is mix the vintage design with modern sizes and accommodate what we can for tires. So we have like this right here is a modern 15-inch wheel. This is our Halibrand replica design. The spinner is no longer holding the wheel on, so it's still held on by the 5 lug nuts. So it's just as safe as any regular wheel on a car, on a regular production car. But you have the spinner, which not only spins in place, it has a locking set screw in it, so that holds that whole thing together, and you get the vintage look, but still with the modern safety of the bolt-on wheel. Then we also can do those wheels in a 17 or an 18, which really helps in terms of tire availability and what type of tire you can run. You can run a much more aggressive tire. You can run a race tire, or it helps with brake sizes. When you go with a 15-inch wheel, you're kind of limited to the factory brakes. You have to run about an 11-inch disc inside of that, whereas when you go to a 17 or 18, you can get up to a 13-inch or 14-inch brake, and you really have a much better brake from that standpoint.
So the tires are the wheels rather, are one of those things that are cool and cool on a performance standpoint. Now tires, I gotta admit, I'm gonna pick Billboards because they look cool. It's bias ply, you move around a lot, it's an old tire, it's in a lot of cases a non-DOT tire. Jim wouldn't be caught dead with an ultra cool set of 15s like on this 427 powered car. I would, I like it, but you gotta be honest with yourself. The reason why you're doing it is because it looks cool. It's not gonna handle, it's not gonna turn as well, it's not gonna brake as well. And your ride quality going down the highway, I remember driving them home, and I always say, you're driving in a straight line and the car just starts wanting to wander on you. It's just a lot of flex in the sidewall, and that's all there is to it. But on tires, we're gonna have to disagree, because you wouldn't go within a set of these, but I would all day long.
Right. I'm gonna stick with the 18s just because of the tire availability and the type of tire we run, particularly at the horsepower levels we're at. A tire like this, you can obliterate it with 300 horsepower. And if you're going to have 500 or 600 horsepower in the engine, you need as much rubber as you can get, and sticky rubber too.
So when you call Factory 5, I'm going to be the kid that put the baseball card in his Schwinn to make the sound with the spokes, and Jim was one thinking that's going to create drag, and I'm not going to go as fast. So that's the answer you're going to get from both of us. On this car, this is the poster child for cool and maybe not so functional. Jim, why don't you go over to Adam's car and we'll talk. We got tires, we got wheels, we got brakes. Let's talk vintage patina and vintage style versus modern performance. First of all, let me hog the limelight on this car, because this is a cool car, all right? But it's got the Billboard, it's got the period correct 15-inch tires, got from down in Virginia. It's got a really cool setup, Webers. Like I said, they don't run very well, but they sure are cool. If you look in the cockpit, the cool thing about the FIA car is, look where the speedo is in the dash. Here I am sitting in the cockpit driving my car. How fast am I going? Oh, over there. Because the FIA requirement had a street car speedometer was one of the requirements, and that's where they stuck it. On a race car, you want your tach here. You want your oil pressure and your water temperature. You don't care about your speedo. So that's cool, but not very functional cool. I got this off the internet. This is really cool. It's a vintage lap timer. So we can go back and just reset this thing, and it'll go for 7 12-hour increments. So you get your lap timer at Watkins Glen
or maybe you go over here to Lime Rock and you stop it and man, it made and it's also got a tachometer, so if you do a flying mile on the highway, you can figure out your average speed on that. So there's a lot about this car that's maybe not as good from a modern standpoint, but it's just cool, and being honest with yourself about saying, hey, you know what? I'm going to build a car that maybe it's not going to perform as good as it could, but it's going to look cool in the meantime. So I love this car and for what it is, and it's still, by the way, the performance envelope of this car is still way in the upper stratosphere with respect to most cars in the street. Moving over though, if Webers don't work, I know those carburetor lookalikes, Jim. Why don't you show them on that red car?
Yep.
That's kind of a best of both worlds.
Right. This is an area where the aftermarket has really come a long way. In the last few years, where really they can replicate a vintage design and make this thing look like it's just come out of the 60s, but it still runs like a modern car. It has a modern EFI, but it's all tucked under this air cleaner. Really, from a quick glance, it's hard to tell that's even a fuel-injected engine. You start the key though, and it runs just like a modern car. So, this is really one of the areas where the technology has caught up, but it hasn't made it look that way. So, really, you can still get the look, but have the drivability, and you really have your cake and eat it too.
Well, when we're talking about cool, one person's cool is not another person's cool, and what we define as that standard. I mean, that's the cool thing about what we do. Is we build cars and parts that enable you to build it your way. And one of the most cool things about going to like a Huntington Beach, which we said yesterday was rescheduled to September 12th, and one of the cool things about going to an open house, which is rescheduled September 5th, and we're really hoping those things happen because we want to make a big deal out of 25 years of building cool stuff. One of the cool things is you go there and you start to see what other people's ideas are. And I think all of us guys, from the time we were modifying our bicycles to now, have been doing things that we thought were cool. And it's kind of a rude awakening, but most women really don't think we're cool doing any of it. It's all between our ears, but that's what matters, man. And so you build a Factor 5, you build it your way. You're not buying an appliance. You're not getting something off the showroom floor and no, there's plenty of cool things out there, but there's nothing more cool than the mix of ideas that you put into it, the things that you value. But the most important thing is being intellectually honest about what is the trade-off that you're making. If you're buying a car, you're putting parts into it, you really got to know what is that payback going to give you. We were talking about brake pads before. I don't know anything about brake pads. I call up Jim and say, hey Jim, what pads should I run on this, And I've always thought that when it comes to brakes, yeah, cross-drilled and slotted are cool, they look cool and everything, but I always thought, the temperature of the pads matters more, and the operating temperature of the pads, the cooling. Like I know a lot of coupe guys run air ducts from the fog lights right up to the brakes. There's a lot of things, like we give stainless steel lines stock with the kits, and that makes a huge difference. The rubber lines don't expand. I do that on all my bikes. But what's cool to you? You define that. I think it's age specific. The older I get, the more things that kids do are just not cool and really not cool. But the cool thing about our company is we get to build it our way. And I think if you have a question about functionality, about performance, about engineering, Jim, Jesper, they're your guys. I like stuff that looks cool and performs, but sometimes I'm willing to take a hit on the performance side because it's just cool. So that's our Factory 5 Live today. It's not real in-depth, it's not real detailed. We could probably talk about each advantage of each part. The wheels are a great one. I think it's one of our best compromises where one of our best parts that doesn't compromise, where you get performance and vintage looks all kind of in one package. It's modern, DOT legal, it's lightweight. We race those wheels, Jim, so that's a 19, 20-pound wheel. A lot of the aftermarket wheels, I remember we built a car, it had to be the green hot rod on engine power, or back in the day it was horsepower TV. It was the old the power block. Those wheels had to be 35 pounds each. Yeah. They were massive. What were they? They were Steelies, right?
They were solid billets of aluminum, so they wouldn't even.
But solid, they were like 4 inches.
Right. The weight was so far offset they wouldn't stand up. They would fall to the front, and they were incredibly heavy and hard to put on. Yeah, but they looked the part, right?
They look cool, but you had 4 gyros on your car.
Yeah.
The car's not going to want to turn at all. It's not going to want to stop. It's like a spaceship. So. That's Factor 5 Live for the day. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have any questions, we can jump on. Dave, any last minute questions, anything?
No, we're good.
All right, good. It was kind of a fun thing today. The weather was kind of sketchy. It was supposed to rain today. It was sunny in the early part of the day. I think we'll do something fun outside tomorrow. But Factor 5, Dave out.